Let me get started. Shawn, I want to say thank you for taking this time to join us, talking about some Grizzlies basketball with the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. And, I know this has been, something you've been incredibly passionate about. It's got to be a fun year to watch the Grizzlies this year.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. The thing that I'll say when it comes to the Grizzlies is that there's so many aspects of it that makes it fun. And thank you for having me, by the way, as well. The number one thing that comes across when you see this Grizzlies team is the joy that they play with after, seeing after the grit and grind era. The grit and grind era, what was so special about it was organic, is a word a lot of people like to use around here. It was a place where folks knew when they came to Memphis to play for the Grizzlies, they were going to make the most of their skill sets. That's, I say it all the time when it comes to the core four of Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, Zach Randolph, and Tony Allen. I don't know if they would have hit the heights that they did as players elsewhere than what they did in Memphis, because we embraced what they did. And we're back to that now. For the few years between the grit and grind era and when we changed the front office and coaching staff entirely, competence wasn't there. It is there now. But to go along with that, the style of play that's there, obviously John Morant, being a talent and a brand that we've never had before in Memphis, that's certainly where it starts. But just the camaraderie, the fraternal feeling that's there, how much these players love playing with each other, how much they love playing for Coach Taylor Jenkins, and just the competence in the front office of just letting things naturally progress as they need to. The style of play is fun. It's more offensively oriented than we've ever seen. And just in general, you've got a lot of guys who love playing with each other and playing basketball in general. And so the product is wonderful day in and day out.
That grit and grind mindset, that camaraderie mindset, that family atmosphere, I know it's what makes Memphis such a successful team when they start cooking, but these are things that are staple of Tom Izzo's basketball program at Michigan State. It worked with Zach Randolph, obviously in Memphis, a former Spartan. Now you got two of them down there on the team right now, and Xavier Tillman and Jaren Jackson, and they both seem to play that same style that you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. And the thing about it is that they're, it's beyond the fraternal and chemistry connection that's there between these guys. There's the fun as well. Like when Jaren Jackson Jr., when the camera's on him, he's not putting on a show when he looks like a little kid having fun. That's just his personality. It's a magnetic, positive personality. He plays with that type of emotion on the court. His game is centered on that as well. That's why he's a bit of a unicorn, as people call him, with a different style of game that you usually see in big men. But it's just an infectious personality. Xavier Tillman probably is one of my top 3 interviews on the Grizzlies, just because he's so fun to talk to. There's a difference between him and Jaren. There's youthful exuberance with Jaren. There is a maturity and demeanor and mindset beyond his years with Xavier Tillman. And then you realize these guys are literally, under still 22 or under and a year apart in age. But Tillman is he is such a breath of fresh air. His perspective on things are just so down to earth, and he just is so. It's just so fun to see his reaction to things, because he brings up a perspective that either you haven't thought of or you're like, wow, that just came out of a 22-year-old's mouth. So they're different styles, different personalities, but they gel so well together. I can see why they're best friends, and they gel so well together with this team in general. They've both been great additions over the past few years.
Xavier's always been one of my favorite interviews for a lot of the reasons you just listed, but I find that a lot of athletes, especially the younger ones, search for the cliches, search for the crutches to lean on when they're answering your question. Xavier will look you in the eye and actually ponder what you asked him and give the most thoughtful and honest response that he can think of. And it's incredibly refreshing.
And the thing about it is that you see why he was so valued and probably was underrated as a prospect, because the same thoughtfulness, the same insight that he gives in his answers, after and before the game, that's what separates him on the court, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But on the court, what stands out to me is the thought process that Xavier goes through, the intelligence, the IQ, the good decision-making. It's the same thing in the media sessions. The other day we were talking with him, and he made a comment to the extent of, the one difference that's going on now that wasn't before is that what the mind is telling the body to do, the body is taking a slower response to get it done because we're tired. We are tired. That is a very thoughtful, straightforward, honest answer. And you get that every time when you talk with Xavier. And it is a breath of fresh air, especially for those who write columns, those who do podcasts such as myself. It's nice to have that, human element there instead of the cliches. And it just makes it a joy to be able to interact with him.
You talked about the age being close between Xavier and Jaren. And one thing that Xavier said in the pre-draft process, he goes, I'm different than a lot of guys because I got more to play for. He's been married for a couple of years now. He's got 2 kids. He's he's the oldest young guy you'll ever meet, and I always say that as kind of a compliment. But that mindset always seems to manifest itself both on the court and with the media as well.
Yeah, no, you said if you did not know anything about Xavier Tillman when you interviewed him, you would think that he's a gentleman who's 35 years old, in his mid-30s, supporting a family, who's made it by, he's been successful, thankful for all that he's got, just a genuine good dude. And then you realize this guy's 22 years old. And that's, again, another perspective that sets him apart. Xavier Tillman gets it. Like, he's older than many of the prospects that were in this draft. He's probably a bit more physically limited with his body type. That's nothing against him. It's just an observation of his style of play. But what sets it apart is that he is so fast in processing what he needs to do to put himself in a position to either succeed individually or for his team. Every time he's on the court, there is consistently positive value that he adds. And that's what sets him apart. And it seems like that's across all avenues of life with him. He just wants to make sure that he's making the most of his opportunity and really presenting himself as a benefit. And he does that through his teammates, through interviews on the court, everywhere he is. It's a wonderful quality about him.
And I wanted to ask about that on the court, Brand, because you mentioned Tony Allen a little bit. And I know that basketball fans will understand that you don't have to score to be effective. When you got that guy who can defend and plays his role well, you can win as a team. And Xavier Tillman's always been a guy who will, if you tell him what his role is, he will execute it to a T. At Michigan State, for the first few years, it was defend and rebound. He learned to do that at an elite level and then started adding more scoring to his game as time went on. But coming into this situation with the Grizzlies, you can tell he was asked to defend and rebound, and he seems to have been doing that at a high clip already.
Exactly. And one thing that you hear about players, you see some folks say about players is that if the quantity counting statistics are not there, you think that they may say something positive about them. Well, he adds value outside the box score, as a cliche way of just trying to say something positive. That is a legit strength of Xavier Tillman's game. It's setting effective screens. It's making effective decisions, making effective switches on defense. The two memories or highlights of Xavier so far this season that I can remember is that he took D'Angelo Russell of the Timberwolves and Chris Paul of the Suns one-on-one on the perimeter and swiped both of them for a steal, created a turnover one-on-one. You don't usually see that type of stuff from a guy like Xavier Tillman. So it's the added value from his mind. One of the big things that came from his college game was his ability to pass. We've not seen it so far to the level that it was in college, and that's understandable, but he has a 2-to-1 assist ratio. That proves how good his decision-making is. And to your point, Mr. Spencer, is that when it comes to his ability to know his role in a team concept and to be able to support what his teammates do and also help them be in place to be effective defensively and offensively, that's another thing that you usually don't see, especially from a guy this young. I think Xavier Tillman would have been a perfect backup big during the grit and grind era, and that's why he's added value now and why Memphis loves him.
Definitely. And it helps when you got stars like Jaren Jackson. It helps when you got stars like John Morant, guys who can go get you 25 a night, and impact the game in other ways. And I think that that's a credit to the front office of the Grizzlies to not just get guys that are walking buckets, but to get glue and grit guys that really add value to what the team is trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the depth is what this team focused on. And I wrote a piece for Grizzly Bear Blues, the blog that I write about, and I mentioned that, Xavier Tillman, Desmond Bane, Killian Tilly, a few others may make sense in this draft for the Grizzlies. And the reason why that is because, yes, while we certainly do need scoring and we need shooting, we still need that. A big thing that the Grizzlies add value to is high character, high productivity guys who do it across the board. And both as a scorer, as a passer, he's improved his 3-point shooting as well. But the two-way value that Xavier adds, it may not be big value all the time, but it's more than likely always going to be positive value. That's what made him stand out. So you're exactly right. He may not have a star ceiling, but he sure is a glue guy who's going to add value in more ways than you might expect when he's on the court.
Check out this comparison tonight. The Pistons play the Grizzlies, on Thursday night, and there's a big man for the Pistons, Isaiah Stewart, first-round draft pick, a little bit more athletic than Xavier Tillman. I will give him that, but not exactly an offensive powerhouse. No one's going to mistake the guy for one of the Gasol brothers, as you mentioned. But there seems to be that same hustle, that grind, that energy, and you can see guys becoming more valuable like that to their NBA teams yet again.
Exactly. And when the when the Pistons drafted Stewart, I believe that he was drafted 16th overall. A lot of people thought that it was a bit of a stretch, and a lot of people were frustrated in the Memphis area because in the Michigan area that I saw, because they were like, "You're taking him at 16. Why didn't you just wait till the 30s to take Xavier Tillman, a local guy?" But yes, there are a lot of similarities. I've seen that Isaiah Stewart, who looks like he's sculpted out of clay, a Greek god. I've seen the comparison to Ben Wallace. Now, with respect to Ben Wallace, I'm not going to go that far, but Isaiah Stewart's been a lot of fun to watch play. He looks like a grit and grind Grizzlies player as well, but I will say there's similar similarities. Not a lot of scoring, not a lot of flashy play, but doing the small yet significant things that add value. And when you look at their numbers and then you watch their tape, you're like, this guy is more impactful than I thought. They put value in adding value through the small things a lot of other players don't do. So there's a lot of similarities, and both of them are fun to watch. If they get to match up tonight, I'm going to be looking forward to it for sure.
Same. I think that'll be one of the fun front court matches of the game. And, Xavier's game seems to be growing by the game. I know he mentioned to you that he's getting tired, maybe hitting that rookie wall, that people always talk about. But just a couple of nights ago, the double overtime game against Denver, he plays a season high 42 minutes, records a season high 18 points. And you don't normally look to Xavier for that type of production, but he's showing you that if given that opportunity, he'll provide it.
Exactly. And the other thing about it is that his inside game, when you look at Xavier Tillman in that game against Nikola Jokic, of course it was through double teams. I don't know of a big man right now who could take on Jokic, except maybe a healthy Anthony Davis, perhaps, or Giannis, whatever it may be. But Tillman was on Jokic more than anybody in that game. Until Xavier Tillman got tired, he did a pretty decent job against Jokic compared to the rest of his games this season. And yes, he played that inside game so well. He just got tired. This Grizzlies team got tired, but we won't go into that too much. But to your point, he can play that inside game and can do just fine. He struggles a bit against guys who are bigger, but that's just going to be the natural case. But where Xavier Tillman has really stood out to me is that his passing is becoming more like it was in college. The decision-making is there. But Mr. Spencer, he also is adding value as a three-point shooter. He's playing the 5 or the 4 a lot, and in Taylor Jenkins' system on offense, a lot of times that 4 or 5 on a certain play, Brandon Clark does it as well, they'll roll out to the corner to be an outside 3 option for when we get into the lane to get an outlet pass to shoot a 3. Xavier probably has been, along with Kyle Anderson and Desmond Bane, Xavier Tillman has been incredibly productive. He's shot nearly 40% from 3, especially on corner threes. So he's expanded his game. You don't usually see a lot of rookies being able to do that. And so that's what stands out. His mental aspect of things is allowing for him to expand his game more to the NBA level, probably faster than people thought.
I hear what you're saying, and it's Xavier to a T. To find something that he's great at, continue to work on that, but then tinker at the small stuff and get better. In college, he dropped a lot of weight. He completely resculpted his body. He added the offensive game. He was always a great passer, like you said, but he added the outside shot. He added the floater. He added the post moves. And it seems now that he's in the NBA, the defense is still there. The rebounding is still there. Switching on screens to guard smaller guards is still there. But that three-point shot makes him a completely different basketball player at the NBA level. And I know that seems to be a goal of his is to not rest on his laurels, but keep working at his game. And it seems to be showing now.
Yeah, and that goes back to your point about, Xavier pointing out that, he's got more riding on this than most players do his age. So, and he also knows that to get to the point that he's gotten, it's working harder, identifying things earlier, finding ways to expand his game quicker. Those type of things are what has set him apart and made him a special player, despite, being older than most prospects, maybe not having the physical upside of most prospects, but the mental aspect of things, I know I keep going with that ability to take what he's got and not only make the most of it, but find ways to expand on it, even when most people may not think it's there. He certainly has done that. And that addition to his game of the three-point shot, that's the type of things that make players with his physical profile. That three-point shot takes him from being someone who may be in the league 3 to 5 years to a 15-year NBA vet due to the fact that he can be relied on to shoot the 3. And that's been a big step forward for Xavier this year to go along with all the other positive things he does.
Gotcha. And that was something that Zach couldn't really do that well. Zach Randolph was never the world's greatest shooter, but he didn't have to be. He did everything else that the team needed him to do, and I know Xavier will as well. But when you look at the difference between Tillman and Jaren Jackson, I know Jaren's been hurt a lot lately. He hasn't been out on the floor as much as he'd like. but you mentioned him being that unicorn presence and this guy who can do so many different things. How important is it to the Grizzlies' success to have a Jaren Jackson on the floor, but also have a Xavier Tillman on the floor because of what they can do differently as big men?
Well, it gives Coach Taylor Jenkins different types of players to throw in together, and not only together, but over a full 48 minutes. So if you've got Xavier Tillman, who's willing to do the small things, he's willing to do the small screens, the extra passes, get into the lane to box out, whatever it may be. Those type of things free up Jaren Jackson to add the value that you typically don't get from a guy his size. The ability to shoot the three, obviously, to be a pick and pop option, to be a guy who can, limited right now, but certainly expanding his game as a dribble drive option. The inside-outside combination of what Jaren Jackson can do is complemented by Xavier, because Xavier can take care of the inside while Jaren's operating on the outside. Plus, Xavier can help out with getting Jaren and Ja open. You see Jonas Valanciunas doing that a lot right now. But even if Xavier's never the long-term partner with Jaren, it looks like they're going to be teammates for a while. If Jaren is out, then you've got Xavier, who he may not be able to create like Jaren can, but that intelligence level of Xavier on the second unit of an NBA squad versus other second units, it really stands out. So the things that Xavier does so well, doing things efficiently, adding value all the time, it complements Jaren so much, because not only is it going to let Jaren be able to do the things that he does that's rare for his size, but it also makes sure that Xavier, to give Jaren rest, is still going to be able to take advantage of things against lesser units off the bench, and that's where Xavier's shining this year.
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. My last one for you, Shawn, is you look at the standings. I know the Grizz are in that playoff hunt. The Pistons are, in full-on tank mode, trying to find their next, unicorn, so to speak, at the top of the draft. But the Grizzlies are still in the hunt for that playoff spot. Obviously, they need to win this Thursday night against the Pistons to stay where they're at. But as the team moves down the stretch here with just a couple of games to go, how important do you feel Xavier Tillman's role is to ensuring that they do get into the postseason, they do get where they're trying to go, and he continues to grow as well?
Oh, it's hugely important, because right now he basically is looked at as, we've talked all season about, we drafted Xavier Tillman. Brandon Clark has been viewed before the season as being our third most important prospect for our future. But Brandon Clark's been injured this year. He came back, played last night. He hasn't been as effective as he was his rookie season. So right now, I would say that the confidence level in Xavier Tillman is as being our third big. He's going to be huge. And the reason why he's going to be huge is because one of the constant things that we have on this team, the two constant things we have, is our ability to play defense and our bench. Xavier Tillman has been able to add value on both of those ends. And so when Jonas is off the court, and with Jaren's utilization still being kind of managed with him back from injury, it looks like Xavier Tillman's still going to have that 15 to 20 minutes a night. So with the team itself regressing a bit from where it was in early April, to have a constant presence like Xavier adding value at both ends of the court, that's going to be huge. If he can add his value in when the bench units for both teams are playing for the rest of the season for the Grizzlies, when they're playing another team's bench unit, his presence on the court is going to be so valuable, because he's going to constantly add value and allow for us to continue to have a boost to either get back in games or keep leads. So he's going to play a big role going down the stretch of the season. Awesome.
If you're a Michigan State Spartan fan or Grand Rapids native who wants to check out Xavier Tillman and hear how he's playing with the Memphis Grizzlies, you want to check out Shawn Coleman's Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Definitely your home for all things Grizzlies, and a lot more Memphis fans up here in the north than there were just 2 years ago. I can tell you that. A lot of people following Xavier Tillman, a lot of people following Jaren Jackson, and I want to make sure they check out the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Check out your stuff, Shawn Coleman, man. We really appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. And I'll tell you this, with how much Memphis has invested in Michigan State with Zach and Xavier and Jaren now, and the fact that Michigan themselves, they're coming up as a basketball program, Grizzlies fans are really focusing on Michigan as well. There's a lot of good things going on there basketball-wise. Jealous of y'all, but thank you so much for having me, Jamal.
No problem. Thank you very much, man.
All right.